Hello everyone, and welcome to another Gear Talk. How is everyone doing today? It's been a little bit of time since we had the release of the E-Day trailer. The dust has settled a little bit, people have calmed down. As for me, I didn't record a video that went up last Thursday because I put my reaction up on Sunday to show how I felt about the trailer. It was great, go and watch. It's me freaking out and so happy about the possibilities and everything and just doing this the entire time. So good times had by all. Today, however, we are going to actually start jumping in and looking at some conversation topics we can have involving the actual event of E-Day itself. So with E-Day, it's very important to know that this is like the biggest event in the entire Gears of War story. Like E-Day is the catalyst for all the events we've ever played through and done. That is everything. Now, yes, we have the Pendulum Wars. We have everything involving like the time of swords and shields, as Dell would say. You know, we have all of that stuff too. But it's important to know that when it comes to everything involving the story and everything involving what we know and the biggest event of pretty much everyone on Serra, it is actually E-Day, Emergence Day. So I kind of just want to make this video to talk about like stuff to get people prepped and ready, or have your mindset to be aware of what you're going to be expecting, because I've seen a lot of videos just tackling like, oh, here's what this character's up to, or what this character's doing, or oh, a little tidbit of info for you, like the Mark II Lancer doesn't exist yet. We're going to cover all of that and then some. I have a plethora of things to cover, and we're just going to talk about everything involving what you need to know getting ready for the game E-Day by talking about the events of the event E-Day. I have this video set up in 3 different sections to talk about things. The first one is going to be talking about what is going on with the characters, where they are or where they find themselves during E-Day itself. The next section we have is talking about the actual attacks that happen on E-Day, where the emergences occurred. And then the final thing we'll talk about is just some little trivia or facts involving things to know of the day of E-Day, about things that didn't exist, weren't going on, or were going on, that a lot of people kind of skim over and don't really think about. So let's start at the top of the list talking about the characters. Category 1 is kind of split into 2 different parts. So Category A and Category B for Part 1, because I'm going to be splitting up the Locusts and I'm going to be splitting up the humans, or the Serrans in general, and we're going to cover each side and talk about like, here's what the Locusts were up to and where they were, because a lot of Locusts are back in the picture. Like throughout the story, a lot of Locust leaders or Locusts in general end up dying. Same for the humans, but a lot of Locust prominent figures are killed. Now that we're going to E-Day, all of them are basically back on the table. That's something to be aware of. All of them are basically back. So we're going to start off by talking about the Locusts, and then we'll go into the humans. Starting off the list, we'll start with the big bad himself that we all know, not the leader of everything, but definitely the general himself, General Rom. So it's important to state that with General Rom, with everything that happened before E-Day, we're not going to really cover that because we're here for E-Day. He rose up through the rank in order to lead the Locust onto the surface to fight the humans. We find Rom over in Jannermont. He is one of the first people to come up. As far as we are told, Jannermont is the first emergence area and Rom is leading the charge. He emerges and he is at Jannermont and he is just laying waste. That is where we find him in the very beginning. Now, a lot of people are wondering, will we see him in Gears of War E-Day? Now, we're going to cover that with a few more characters coming up, and we're going to talk about that. Let's just say it's a maybe. That's the best I can say. We might see him, but for now, as of when E-Day occurs, he is over in Jannermont. Next up, we have C.O.G. Now, C.O.G. is actually on the surface with Rom. Now, he was fighting alongside Rom this entire time during the underground fight with the Lambent, and he rose up and he was on the front lines with him. He also emerged on Jannermont, and he was also laying waste. Not really more to cover. People want to know if we'll see more of C.O.G. I want to say yes, but by what we've seen in the story going forward, like in 2, it seems like C.O.G. was a very new threat everyone came across. So I'm going to say C.O.G. is probably a no. I think C.O.G. is just, I think there's going to be enough going on. We don't need to throw C.O.G. into the mega mix here. The next character is Jermod, which is basically, when it comes to the Bloody Vanguard, which was the group that Rom was leading, he was basically Rom's right-hand man. Now, yes, we have C.O.G. and they're best friends, but C.O.G. wasn't like fighting on the front lines along with the Bloody Vanguard. He was allied with them, but he was already dealing with stuff with the Cantus and the Temple. Jermod, on the other hand, was actually there fighting with Rom most of the time. He was the sniper. So he fought alongside. He also came up at Jannermont, and while they fought, towards the end of the fighting, Rom actually promotes him. I forget the name of the promotion he puts him into, but he's basically like, you are now in charge. Like, the Bloody Vanguard, you're the head of it. You're under me. I believe he's like a high lieutenant type of class, and he's like, you're in charge to fight along in Jannermont. Now, here's the thing you need to know when it comes to that situation. It is alluded to, it's never directly stated, if Rom and C.O.G leave after Jermod is placed, like, as a lieutenant. We don't know. It's kind of seen as like, okay, well, Jermod's fighting here, time for us to go and fight on other battlefields. So that's the idea I'm having towards if Rom does actually appear, then it's the situation where Jermod, you're in charge, we have other fish to fry, and he leaves and he battles. Because Rom is very well known on the surface by 14 AE in the first years of war. Everyone knows who Rom is. Like, he's the general of the Locust army. We know Rom. We know his tactics and what he's doing. Like, he's a very well-known thing. It's not like a first time, oh no, what are we going to do about this? So there is a possibility with Jermod being promoted that Rom is going to extend further on Sarah to see what more damage he can cause. Next up, we have Karn. And now with Karn, during everything that was going on underground, Rom also promoted him. Now, we have High General Rom is Rom's actual class. He's the High General. He actually places Karn as a general also, just as a general. He is not a High General. He is not on the same level as Rom. He is one below Rom. Rom places him there because his duty is to go over to the Republic of Groznia. He is going there in order to wipe out the Grozny. That is his mission, because Rom understood there was a war going on already. We're going to deal with the winners. They're going to take the brunt of the force. Someone's got to go deal with the small fry. He sent Karn. Now, that's not really saying anything bad about Karn. It's just that, you know, we're aiming at taking out the bulk of the winners, the bigger threat, and someone's got to clean up them. And think of it like this. He sent just Karn and his crew, and Karn wiped out the entire Republic. Like, that was all Karn. Like, think about that. Like, all this battle over on the Tiras and Ephira and all the other cities inside of Tiras, and we have Karn just wiping out a country on his own. So keep that in mind. So E-Day, he is over in the Republic. Next up, we have Ukon. Now, Ukon actually stayed over in the Hollow. He was still down there during E-Day. He was over working on his experiments, playing around. He was making deals with Rom about, like, okay, like, now and then I'll come up and grab some experiments. But during E-Day himself, he is still down over in Nexus. That is where he is. He's over at the capital, still just chilling there. After that, we do have Vrol. Now, with Vrol, he's like the leader of the Cantus at the time before C.O.G takes over. We don't know where he was at the time. It's never openly stated what he was doing. My assumption is he might still be in Nexus, but we're never given clarification. I want to assume Nexus, but I have him down as unknown because we were just never told. After that, we have Srok, the previous general before General Rom. Now, Srok was in charge of everything, and Rom basically led a coup against him and took over the Locust generalcy, like that entire seat, per Mira kind of backing him, and he was basically sent out to the Hollows to fight to the death against the Lambent, but he was pretty pissed off at Rom. Just a very quick synopsis. Jumps up to Jannermont and actually decides to take Rom in a one-on-one fight. The problem is that Rom was already expecting this and had plans for this, and he makes his way up to Jannermont, so technically he's in Jannermont on E-Day, but he dies like 5 minutes after he emerges. So Srok is unfortunately dead. We will not be seeing him in E-Day unless we get like a sight of what the Locusts are doing at the time. Finally, for the Locusts, we have Mira. Now, with Mira, she actually stays in the Nexus. Rom goes out and he's leading the charge, but we have the actual leader of the Locusts is still at the capital. It just kind of makes sense, because why would you send the head person to the front lines? Rom was already made for this. He was made for battle. He is the general. If he were to die, as we see in 2, someone is able to take his place as a leader, but we can't really lose Mira, so Mira does stay in the Nexus, and that covers the Locusts. Going over to the human side of things, we actually start off with Marcus Phoenix. So with Marcus, by what we saw in the trailer, we know that on E-Day at least, he could have been somewhere earlier in the day, but we know on E-Day at least he is over in Kelowna. So in Kelowna is where we find Marcus Phoenix, and he is having it out with Locust. He's actually going fist to fist. He's barely getting his gun out in the trailer. It's a great trailer, and we know that he is surviving and fighting in Kelowna in the current time. Could he have been somewhere earlier? Maybe. E-Day happened around late morning is when it actually occurred, when everything began. So in the trailer, we kind of see it more dark, so it's either a krill storm is coming, or it is just later in the day. It's getting towards the evening. So for all I know, he could have been somewhere else earlier, but at the time being, we know that at E-Day, he is at least in Kelowna. Following him, we have Dom, who we also got in the trailer. Dom we see is also in Kelowna at the time, but it's very important to state something involving Dom. Now, as of Gears of War 2, when we get a flashback from Dom having a memory about Maria, we see that on E-Day, he was actually at home with Maria. So as far as I can tell, this was probably around Aphira. He was in Aphira with Maria, and they were having just time to themselves. He had just woken up. This was all on E-Day, so before the holes came, I guess, down, because they opened up. Before that, he was at home with Maria. His kids were sent off to his parents' place, and, well, actually, yes, Maria's parents, not Dom's. Dom's we get later on as MIA. So they're sent over there, and they are having E-Day in Aphira. So at the beginning of everything, of E-Day, he is in Aphira. Once everything goes completely cattywampus, the situation happens with E-Day where he is then shipped out, and we see him in Kelowna towards the end of the day. So he's over in Aphira, but at the end of it all, he is in Kelowna with Marcus Phoenix. With the humans, there are a lot of characters we meet and a lot of characters we can talk about. Now, here's the thing. I had to figure out what humans to put on this list, or else we're going through everybody. So I decided for this one, we're going to cover either main characters that are very prominent in the story that we have throughout the series, or characters where we actually know the whereabouts on E-Day. For instance, next up, we have Cole. I'm going to talk about Cole. Cole is not enlisted and fighting during E-Day, but it is important to say where he was. He was actually at home in Hanover. He was walking down the street, and on a TV, he saw all the destruction and everything that was going on. Hanover was not one of the main cities hit by E-Day. That was not one of the attacks. So his city, it wasn't safe. The locusts spread out everywhere. But at least for him, he wasn't like in the brunt of it all. So Cole, after seeing that, had to make a decision in life, and he decided instead of Thrashball, he was going to join the army. Following him, we do have Baird. Now Baird, we have it where he was actually in Aphira at the time. At the time of everything, he was in Aphira. He was actually prepping and planning to sign up with the military because of everything involving his parents. Long story. Basically, he's a trust fund boy. And when E-Day occurred, he's like, great, when I'm finally actually going to enlist, that's when this happens. So he's over in Aphira during everything, about to sign up for the military. So next up, we have Anya. So Anya, we actually do get to see where she is during everything in the Gears of War 4 flashback in Hoffman's mind. So she is actually over in Aphira, along with Hoffman and Kim. All three of them are there, and they're fighting off the Locust. Aphira was hit, so they are in the brunt of it all, just basically driving civvy trucks trying to live. So she is there with Hoffman and Kim, fighting off the Locust. Talking about it now, Hoffman is also in Aphira. He's fighting off, he's trying to get transport over to the House of Sovereigns, and Kim's squad is actually the one that assists and gets them there and holds off the Locust while they're inside. So that takes care of those three. They were all three in Aphira at the time. Next up, we have Ty. So Ty, we don't know where Ty was on E-Day. We don't know where he was. We can assume, as far as I can tell, he is unknown status, but possibly in Tyrus. He's possibly in that country because it's never stated he went back to the islands or anything like Bernie did. As far as we know, he stayed there. Again, this was 6-week break between wars. A 6 weeks break was there. A 6-week break. There's my sentences. So we don't know what Ty was up to, but I'm assuming he stayed on the country and he didn't like leave the mainland to go back to the island. So we don't know, but he's possibly somewhere in Tyrus. That's all I got there. Next up, actually, we have Dizzy. So Dizzy's a fun one because we know where Dizzy was, and he wasn't where you would think he would be. So he was actually a part of the Merchant Navy. He was going around basically just like delivering things, Merchant Marines, Merchant Navy, however you want to say it, that's what he was. So he wasn't enlisted, but he was at least like assisting with the war effort. He was actually over, and I had to write it down here, he was at Porta Ogari. That's where he was at the time of E-Day because they got the news about everything that was happening. His hometown was actually hit, and he was trying to get back there, and that's where he was kind of like trying to figure out what to do next because it's like, I need to get home. My town was just hit by these holes opening up from the ground. So Dizzy was at least outside, like he was over, like he was in the ocean on a boat, but he was like right at the port for the Ogari. So that explains what it was up with Dizzy. Next up, we have Paddock. So Paddock during E-Day was back home over in the Republic of Grozny. He was back over there, and he was fighting against Karn. He ended up getting sent off across the ocean. He was basically just drifting across. He was like one of the only survivors, and he made it there and ended up joining the C.O.G to fight against Karn later on. But during E-Day, the Grozny put up a fight, but they were all just wiped out and massacred. Like that, the Grozny were done. And he was one of the only ones that survived. We learned later on a lot of survivors of Grozny came to be, but he did not know that at the time. He thought like he was one of the only ones left. Like it wasn't like he was 1 out of 10 or anything, but like out of the handful that were there, He thought, I've been separated, I want to fight and kill this thing, I don't know what else to do here. Coming from two other characters we'll cover all at once, because I have them back to back here, we actually have Sophia Hendricks, and we have Keegan. So Keegan is also located over at Halvo Bay with Sophia. They are both here, and basically at this time, Sophia is a reporter. So Sophia has not joined the military. It is after E-Day she joins the military, but it's like at this moment she's a reporter. She's a frontline reporter. And she's very, like, persistent and very heavy against the C.O.G. So when she enlisted, a lot of people were like, wait, you were against the C.O.G., why are you joining? Because of the fact that the C.O.G., you know, are the only ones that can fight this thing. I'm going to join them and fight them. And when she enlists, she is actually enlisting with the Onyx Guard to go through that training to become Onyx Guard level. Keegan, however, this is a great tie-in because both of them involve Onyx Guard somehow, because she was a cadet in the Onyx Guard. Keegan was a quartermaster at the time. Jeremiah Keegan himself, the quartermaster with his amazing hair at the time. He had great hair. He was stationed over in Halvo Bay, and he was the quartermaster there, basically keeping stock of weapons. Everything was attacked, and the Onyx Guard ended up bunking up with him. They ended up putting up, like, barricades and everything, and holding out in his quarters, over in, like, you know, where all the weapons were. And while everyone was held up, they were injured there, and they needed supplies. Keegan took it upon himself to go through the river system back and forth and shuttle weapons to other survivor groups in order to keep everyone fighting. So that was what he did. And he was doing such a great job, and they were so impressed, they actually enlisted him. They brought him into the Onyx Guard. They said, you want to join? Come with us, and we'll, like, script you in, we'll inscribe it, we'll get you into the Onyx. And that's how he joins the Onyx Guard. So it's fun. A cadet, and then you have someone who just joined. So, you know, it works perfectly for those two. After that, we have Jace Stratton. So Jace is over in Olima. He is only like a child. He's a very young child at the time, and everything is attacked. His entire family is killed. He's saved by everyone. Like, we have, like, Wizen saves him, and we also have, like, some gears that are able to fight him off. But he is basically orphaned, and Jace does live, and he makes it to the end of everything, but his entire childhood to young adult life is nothing but spent in just war. That's all he has. He never really... He got the 6 weeks of peace, but he didn't really get to appreciate it like everyone else did. He spent the rest of his life just in war. And then when it finally ended, I'll become an actor. So that's how it happens. You thought we were done with Jannermont. Well, we're not done with Jannermont yet. Okay, over in Jannermont, we have another person who makes their appearance, William Carmine. So William Carmine is there, and he's basically retiring at the time. Like, this is like he's putting away his gun, he's done, he's finished. And this is when, as we talked about, Rom, Scourge, Jermod, they all appear here. Technically, Srock is there too. So the guy just got the worst hand you could possibly get. Anyone in Jannermont picked the worst hand you could have. So he tries to fight back, but he lasts like 30 seconds, and he's killed by Rom. So he does appear in the E-Day, but he dies relatively at the same speed that, well, even Srock lasted a little longer, but they both die there in Jannermont by the hands of Rom. Next up, as we mentioned earlier, we have Bernie. Bernie actually, during the 6 weeks of peace, actually left and went back to the islands. So she basically was on like a soft retirement from the C.O.G. She was basically done, and she was just going to retire with her husband. And when everything happened with E-Day, the islands were not affected. Now, the islands still did get locust in time, because obviously you can figure out a way across the ocean. If you can't go under it, you might as well just go over it. So they did make their way through eventually. But during the time that she is there, during E-Day, they only hear about what's going on the mainland. They aren't affected by it at the time, but they're just like, well, with Bernie, they're like, I gotta go back over there. Like, my squad, my people, my friends, they're all on the mainland. I have to leave and assist them. So Bernie spends about 10 years trying to return to the mainland, but on E-Day itself, she learns about the news, and that's when she's planning to get back with her squad. Coming up, following the old guard, we have Padrick Sultan. So with Padrick, we don't get information about what happened to him. We have information that about 1 year after everything, he was teamed up with like Marcus, Dom, Ty, and they would go around, and they were like the crew at the time. They were Delta, and that it worked. It was a really good team, actually. But the problem is we never got anything before that for E-Day. We don't know anything that happened on E-Day. So I don't think Padrick... That's the thing. He could easily show up. They could easily write Padrick into the game. No problem. They could easily do it. But we don't know what he's doing. We have absolutely no idea. So, you know, at least with Ty, we can kind of figure he's on Tyrus. But Padrick could be anywhere. He could be in another country altogether. We don't know, because he was a sniper and he was sent out everywhere. So maybe he was getting a ride home on E-Day and he was in another country. Maybe he was in, like, the Austrian Republic. I don't know. He could have been anywhere. So Padrick, I honestly don't know what to say. I want to assume in Tyrus, but I have no idea. Coming up, we've got ourselves Gabe Diaz. Yes, we are going to talk about, aside from Wukong, a character that is from Tactics. Now, Gabe, we don't know his official place where he was. We do know he was on Tyrus, though. He was at least in the country when everything hit. He did survive with his brother Oscar, which Oscar we can put on here too. We don't know where he was at the time. But they did survive, and he chose to stay with the motor pool. And as far as we're aware, he was kind of just laying low. Like, he was obviously fighting, but he never chose to go back to the front lines. So I don't know where he is, but he's probably in the home country of Tyrus somewhere. Finally, wrapping up all the humans. I know there was a lot, but there are a lot of humans. We do kind of get the idea of where they were. We have Adam Phoenix. Now, his specific location, we do not know, but it is important to know that he was aware of everything that was going to happen with E-Day, with Mira. He was aware of it. He knew it was coming. He was in talks with Mira. I'm assuming he was definitely at home, probably at East Barricade. Like, I can't, like, at the Phoenix Manor, I can't think of anywhere else he would be. He probably ended up going to the capital. He probably went to Afira at one point to assist in the battle or give his ideas. But on the day of E-Day, we technically don't know his exact location. But he is definitely around, and he is probably over in Afira, probably assisting or planning out what's going to happen next. Finishing up with all the characters, we're going to move on to the next part of everything, the emergence locations, or the battles that were taking place, basically. So, starting off, we've talked about a lot, but Jannermont. Jannermont was, as far as we're aware, the first official battle that occurred, the first hole that opened up, and out came probably the heaviest forces out of any E-hole, because again, as we talked with the characters and their locations, you have Srok coming in. Yes, he dies and he doesn't fight the humans, but he's there. You have Jermad, who's leading Rom's Bloody Vanguard. You have Rom, who's leading the Locusts in general. You have Scourge, who is basically just being a buddy at the time. A great guy, but he's also there to fight and make sure everything's going good. And you have everything coming up. Everything from under the sun has probably come up with them. And everything is wiped out. Everyone is just dead. Rom is going in and taking no prisoners. It's basically a slaughterhouse, and you can't really turn off the off button. That's what's going on. So Jannermont was just one of the bloodiest you will ever see in the entire story. I don't think we're going to get in the game itself, because that's more following the Locust story of what happened. But next up, we do have Alima. Now, Alima is very interesting, because Alima is constantly thrown back and forth constantly. It goes from human control to Locust control to human. We talked about in the Alima video, it is thrown around so much for who's in control. So humans obviously have it first. The E-holes happen, the Locust attack. The C.O.G is able to actually put up a fight here. We do see, like, Berserkers are in the area. The C.O.G is able to kind of fight them off a little bit. There's a lot of casualties, but it does seem like the humans at least have a footing here, and they are able to fight. Which is weird, because Jannermont's like a military base, and Jannermont still got annihilated, but it was also the biggest wave. So I would assume Jannermont held their own for a while, kind of backed away, and then retook it, and then the Locust came back with Krill Storms. It really is a back and forth, and it probably is one of the heaviest fought for areas, because you have other areas like the capital and everything we're going to talk about where, yeah, they were fought over, but sooner or later they were taken out and destroyed. Alima, though, they fought tooth and nail to keep Alima, and I think the closest we'll ever get really is Zeta Squad talking about it, but I think we'll get some references, at least in E-Day, about the fight that's going on. Speaking of the capital, we are now talking about Afira, the capital of the entire Tyrus nation, the C.O.G in general. This is the capital of it all. So, when it comes to Afira, they also put up a big fight there. Like, a lot of Locusts came in, but there were a lot of C.O.G already there. It was a major fight. Towards the end of it all, though, what's the best way to put it? A stalemate seems like it's the weakest term I can put for this, but it was kind of like both sides kind of eliminated each other. Because as we see in the first Gears of War, they're landing in Afira and they're fighting in Afira, but it does look like the Locusts are in Afira fighting and the C.O.G soldiers are going through Afira. You do get that sense of survival, though, so my opinion is the Locusts probably took out Afira, because it is stated they lost Afira. Afira was destroyed. Like, we see the remnants and the ruins, but it is just a desolated city. They're going through surviving, so I'd say the Locusts probably annihilated Afira, but it's kind of more of like they're not making it a base of operations or anything. It's just somewhere where you travel through at this point. There's no, like, entrenched areas the Locusts have taken over, like we see in 3 when they're, like, Savage Locusts and they're occupying areas on the surface. Next up, we have Kelowna. So Kelowna is the stage of E-Day, the game we're going to be playing in. It's going to be fun. I'm going to love it. We do get a little bit of a reference from it in the third game where there's a poster of Remember Kelowna. So I'm going to assume that a lot of people died at Kelowna. It was probably another massacre site. Like, it seems like by the look of the city when E-Day is occurring, like definitely the corpsers are definitely doing some work on the buildings, but it looks like that's going to be a very big battle. Like, we have Alima, who's fought over constantly. Kelowna looks like it's going to be a slaughter fest, but they're going to put up a fight. So I'm going to be interested to see how Marcus and Dom deal with everything there and how they end up getting out in the end. So Kelowna, that's going to be a real hot button one when we get to it. So I'm excited for Kelowna. Next up, we have Matino Junction. Matino Junction is the hometown of Dizzy. His hometown was also hit. The C.O.G did put up a fight there, but the C.O.G didn't really hold it for too long. They did end up getting wiped out. A lot of them got killed off, but it does seem like they at least fought. It wasn't like Jannermont where they tried to fight, but they just got annihilated. It seems like they did put up a fight, but the Locust overall just took them out. We don't really get a lot about Matino Junction except for like how much it was devastated. So Matino Junction, I don't think we're going to get a lot of word of it. Maybe a reference, but Matino Junction definitely took a beating, and yeah, that one was also lost by the C.O.G. And we can't forget about the Republic of Groznia. Now, a lot of people are like, why would there be e-holes there? You know, we don't know the full layout. What if there's an ocean in between? You know, like, how would Karn get there? There was an e-hole, okay? They emerged in Groznia. I don't know how else to tell you that. It's not like Karn got on the back of Shibboleth and paddled him over to the Republic of Groznia and had everyone else take a boat and a ferry. No, they emerged in Groznia and they wiped it out. It is stated in the story, Groznia got just annihilated. It is probably just like Jannermont. That was like ground zero for emergence days in the country for the Republic of Groznia. So just as bad as Jannermont, they got wiped out immensely very quickly. So I would say, Karn, you did good work. You kind of measured up by yourself as Rom and the others, wiped them out. So applause to you, Karn. Like, he doesn't get a lot of credit. Like, you can say what you want about Karn. He did put the work in, at least with the Grozny. So, hey, props. I can't argue props there. Finally, for the third part of this entire video, we're just going to talk about some facts or things you need to know going into E-Day, or things that will occur there or things that have not occurred yet, things like that. So keep in mind this stuff when you're going into E-Day because of the fact that this is vital information for the story itself, for the background lore that's going on. Starting off, and I have them all in notes here. I don't really have them in an order, but starting off, we do have, and this number's always bounced around a lot, but this looks like what they're going to be sticking with from here on out. 25% of humans in the entire planet are killed within the 26 hours of Sarah. Sarah has 26 hours instead of 24, and the humans themselves are basically a quarter of them all, 25%, are dead. That is how many are gone. They even state billions are killed on Emergence Day. They wiped out humans like they were cattle. A lot of people died. Like, I brought up Jannermont and Groznia, how they were just eradicated just quickly as ever. Imagine that on a wide scale with many, many, many other cities. Like, a lot of people died. That's an understatement. Like, a good percentage of humankind is dead. Women, children, men, the elderly, all of them are gone. Keep in mind, E-Day will be a very, very bloody story. Because a lot of people, I cannot stress enough how much 25% of the humankind is. Human population, kind, species, all of it. It's a lot of people. Lots of people will die. This might be the bloodiest Gears of War you will see. The most gruesome, graphic. This might be it. You might be tuning in to just a series of slaughter shows, ladies and gents. I will warn you now. Continuing with that, as we talked about originally, the Grozny were essentially wiped out. So remember, like, if they're going to mention, like, what's the Grozny doing? Have we heard from them? What's going on with them? They're probably going to say, like, they've gone radio silent, we haven't heard a thing, because they got wiped out so quick, they didn't know what happened in Groznia. So, I will assume we're not going to get a lot from Grozny except a mention. It is important to remember, though, that they do end up surviving. A very good pocket do, and they end up living on the subs and on ships, led by Trescu. So, remember that, like, all of them are not dead. They play a role later on in the story. Like, in 3, they come for backup, that Baird and Cole find them. So, remember, they are still somewhere in the world once E-Day is done. Another thing to tuck into your noggin right now, during E-Day, the Stranded are not a thing. The Stranded do not come to be until after the Hammer strikes, after 1 AE, then the Stranded become an actual group, an actual group of humans in the world. As of E-Day, everyone is a civilian. C.O.G have not decided to blast the planet and lose the trust of people. No, this is a straight-up fight. The civilians are 100% with the C.O.G trying to survive. Stranded are not a thing yet. Anyone you know that is a stranded, at this time, they are currently a civilian. Remember that. Prescott is not the chairman at the time. During E-Day, there is actually a different chairman that is involved. I originally said in the video when I was really excited, I said Monroe. Monroe was the chairman before the chairman for Prescott. So he was 3 back. So Prescott, then we have the one that is going to be in charge, Dalyell, or Thomas Dalyell, depending how you want to say it. And then it goes Monroe. So Monroe, Dalyell, Prescott. That is the order of operations. Dalyell does die very early into the Locust War, and then Prescott takes over. For instance, at 1 AE, Prescott's in charge, but during E-Day, it is Dalyell. He is in charge of everything. I think it's just days or months later, he actually does die. I believe it's from a heart attack, and then Prescott is placed in charge of everything. Marcus never saw a Cantus until 14 AE. Remember that. When we go into E-Day, if we are going by a canonical sense of everything for what Marcus had seen, we're not going to see any Cantus. Like, if we're playing other stories than just Marcus and Dom, like there's other paths in the story, we're playing as someone else, yeah, we could see a Cantus then. But if we're only playing with Marcus and Dom, technically, we won't see a Cantus. That's one reason I don't think we'll see C.O.G. So, no Cantus at all because Marcus never saw one. That's just Gears of War 2 for you. Go ahead and play it where they first see the Cantus. I'm not making it up. They never saw a Cantus until then. I've talked about it a bit in this video, but the 6 weeks of peace, so the 6 weeks in between the wars, that is probably going to be where we start the story, unless they're going to jump right into E-Day, because during that 6 weeks, it's peace. It's considered the 6 weeks of peace. It's nice. It's fine. War is finally done. They almost went through an entire century of war, so it was nice to have nothing going on. It was finally a ceasefire. Everything was done, and then the Locust attack. So remember, like, weaponry, like tanks, all of that is slowly being put away, but there are still weapons and things like that that are out, because they're still working on, like, you know, we're not at full battle right now. We can at least take a rest. So expect to see a good amount of guns that'll be out, but also remember they were in the middle of getting things finished. Like, the war was done. We're going to try and get things back to normal, or whatever normal was after, like, a century. The Mark II Lancer does not exist yet, so the chainsaw bayonet is not a thing yet. We're still working on that. Later on, I guess this is spoilers, so spoiler territory if you haven't read the books. Later on in the war after E-Day, Ty is actually fighting along with Marcus Dom, and I believe Patrick is there also at the time, and they're fighting near in like a suburban area with a hardware store, and at the time they're fighting, they go through the hardware store, Marcus is being attacked, he's pinned down, he's about to be killed by a drone when Ty comes from the back in the hardware store and cuts right through him with a buzzsaw and kills him. So basically Ty's also just like many tools in war. You gotta do what you gotta do. After they return back to Jacinto at the time, because Jacinto is now the capital because the Fear has been destroyed, they basically relay everything to Adam Phoenix. Adam's like, wait a minute, Ty might have a point here. And then that's when he creates and just mass distributes the Mark II Lancers, which we see with the Mark II. They have a faster rate of fire. They don't hit as hard, but the recoil is a lot less. While you have the Retro Lancers, the Mark Is, they're not going to be called Retro yet, just Lancers. They had a very heavy kick, but they were hitting hard when those things hit. Rate of fire is a little slower. Instead of chainsaws, they do have the actual bayonets attached to them. This will mark the start of the new calendar for years on how the entire world views it when it comes to measuring the years of everything. We now have AE, After Emergence is what it's going to be called, and then we have everything that happens there. I believe it's BE, Before Emergence is before that. So BE is everything involving like the Pendulum Wars before. AE is Emergence Day itself, and then you move forward from there measuring. That's why we have 14 AE, 14 after Emergence. So 14 years after Emergence Day is how we view it. Again, Emergence Day changed everything. Even the unit of measuring time was changed because of E-Day. Do you remember the Ragers from Gears of War Judgment and then in Aftermath when they mentioned they thought these things went extinct? Well, we do get an explanation on why they thought that. The Ragers were always known to be running right into the line of fire, and they would normally get shot down and killed, and they would just end up just dying from their own stupidity. That's how the Ragers ended up going, because they would get pissed, run into danger, and then they get shot down and killed. So remember this. The Ragers are technically going to be coming out for the first time on E-Day and attacking. So there's a good chance we'll be coming across the Ragers again. So That spooks me because the Rage form actually does terrify me with how much lead they can actually take before they fall. So the Ragers will probably be making a return in Gears of War E-Day. We kind of touched on it earlier talking about Dom, but we're going to probably get a lot involving his family and him and Maria. So he's in bed. He wakes up. Maria's there saying the kids are over with her parents. We learn that where they are, they get hit by an E-hole and they actually sink into the E-hole. Maria's parents, Benedicto and Sylvia, they all four are dead. They can never recover the bodies. It is a very sad thing. And this is where Maria goes into heavy depression because she just lost her family. And Dom is actually sent to the front lines constantly now because the Locusts have attacked. So with this situation, we're going to get a lot probably involving Maria, and Dom's psyche will probably be the first time we start seeing the cracks appear in his character. So it's going to be fun to see what he was like before the Maria situation, before, you know, her depression, and before she went missing. Remember, right now, Maria will not be missing yet. She will still be at home, and she's home for a while, pretty much going through and crying in the children's room. So at the time being right now, Maria will still be in the picture. I don't believe we're going to get any mention of the Lambent. So the Lambent is a very big issue underground in the Hollow. It's a very big thing going on. The Locusts are well aware of what's going on. Humans, until later on, aren't really that privy to like how big of an issue the Lambent is, or even the Lambent in general. So I don't think in E-Day we're going to get a lot of mention of Lambency in general. We might see some Lambent wretches, but that's about it. I think we're not going to get much involving the Lambent. Finally, to end this is talking about a weapon I really like for the design. We're going to talk about the Marxas and the Breach Shots. We'll make it very quick. So when it comes to the Breach Shot, that is a UIR weapon. Unless we're going to be raiding museums or there were some confiscated and we're going to be busting into like military places to steal them, I don't think we're really going to get the Marxa. I don't think it's going to make an appearance, or if it does, it's just going to be talked about. However, there is a good chance we'll get the Breach Shot. Remember, Jermod's going to the surface, and his main weapon of choice is the Breach Shot. Also, the Ragers are known to use the Breach Shots. So we might get Breach Shot. We might have that in the game, and that'll be fun. It'll be weird. You get the Breach Shot. The Marxa, you don't really get that. So that's what we're looking at for weapons. It's going to be interesting if we actually get it. I'm 50-50. They could leave it out if they want. But as of the new Gears of War with like 5 and everything, they were starting to introduce more of Judgment resurfacing and more of the story and weapons that went with that. And that is your history lesson right now to get ready for E-Day. That is your trivia. That is your facts. That is locations. Those are battles. That is what you need to have in your mind going in. If you have all that information, I think you're going to be all set and ready for some E-Day action whenever it comes out. We still don't have a release date, but if it comes out like 2 or 3 years from now, come back to this video and get your refresher. I have all the information you will ever need right here. I am the lore master. Little side tangent, I've always wanted to go like in a trivia match-off for Gears of War with like some of the other heavy hitters in the community. Just never got the chance. I'd love to do it, have a trivia show, and just see if I stand taller or lower than some. People like Barricade, I think I could possibly outsmart him, but I think he's definitely up there for knowledge. He's very heavy into the books. Then you have characters like Abs. Abs definitely does his research and he practiced, and he has the wiki down lock and key. But I think there's some people I could probably beat in a trivia contest. Yeah, I think my brain's got enough juice I could do it. I want to thank everyone for watching. I want to thank everyone for making this possible. Thank the patrons for making this possible. When we come back with the next video, I don't know if we're going to continue the E-Day conversations. I think we'll go back to regularly scheduled programming unless we do get more information about E-Day. If we do, we'll continue forward with some more E-Day conversations. If not, I have some other videos on my backlog I can touch on. So yeah, a list of things we can go through. Privy to the information I shall have, giving to thy in due time. I don't know. Thank y'all. I love y'all to death. Later.